Hey everyone, this is your final lecture about where we are today in the world and what you and me, what we can do about our current situation. Because we all know that things are not going well. That is something that everyone seems to be able to agree on. Things are uncertain and they feel crazy, and it's because they are crazy. It's not your imagination. We're living through one of the most chaotic periods because of the sheer amount of transitions that are taking place. And there's a pattern to all this. History never repeats itself, but it does rhyme. And there are a lot of historical comparisons to what we're going through today. And the only way you can understand what's happening today is by understanding the past. So I'll tell you where we are today and what we can do about it. First, there is an economic and technological revolution, and it was the most close comparison is the Gilded Age, when we went from an agricultural-based economy to a manufacturing-based economy. It was a very chaotic period, and now the one we're going through is much bigger. We are going from a computer-based society, digital society, to now an AI-based society. When it was steel and oil, that was understandable. Now it's synthetic biology, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and the computer systems that we are creating today, they are going to be replacing humans. There are jobs being lost in real time that are never coming back. It's a very difficult situation, and probably the best term for it is the exponential age. I think that is the best description of the period we're living through, because the change is so exponential. Between Jesus Christ and Thomas Jefferson, there is no new forms of transportation. So Thomas Jefferson, fastest mode of transportation he had, which was a horse, same thing as Jesus. Since the invention of the plane, it only took 66 years for us to land on the moon. So the sheer rate and pace of it is happening faster than anyone can imagine, anyone can even predict. And there are entire jobs, entire industries that are going to be obsolete in very short period of time. And we don't know which ones yet. It's happening too quickly. Obviously, this is a problem for all sorts of reasons. It's good overall, but it's going to mean a lot of people are left behind. Schumpeter's Gale, or creative destruction. So the massive changes that are good are going to leave a large part of the population behind. And we're seeing that all over the world. Those people, they tend to lash out and try to hold on to the past, like what the populists were during the Gilded Age, trying to maintain an agricultural-based economy. So it's leading to a whole lot of uncertainty, which is part of the reason we're also seeing the rise of dictators. When there is uncertainty and when there's chaos, people look for simple answers. That's why we are currently experiencing 19 years of the decline of democracy. Democracy is backsliding all over the globe, comparable to what we saw in the 1930s. And today, for the first time in decades, there are more autocracies ruled by an individual, 91 autocracies versus democracies, 88. So the world is more autocratic than democratic, and people are often voluntarily giving up their freedom to have a dictator that's going to tell them the world is simple and give them simple answers. There are all sorts of different autocracies right now. but they all share some commonalities, specifically trying to return societies to a simpler time when it was more ordered, more pure, and more patriarchal. That's something that unites Xi in China, Putin in Russia, and several other authoritarians, is that they're telling their populations women need to go back into the kitchen. And that is a quote. There are a lot more that is appealing to a previous period when things were simpler. And along with that is nationalism. Now, nationalism, it's something that people seem to misunderstand, and they think it just means national pride. It doesn't. Nationalism is a period, or in history, the nationalist period is a period where all nations are in competition with each other. And that is fundamental to nationalism. It is a zero-sum ideology. That's why the last time we went through nationalism in world history, it ended with World War I and World War II. Part of that nationalism means militaries. We are seeing the biggest buildup of the militaries that we've seen since the Cold War. In 2024, global military expenditures grew. The United States, 37% of all global military expenditures. It is about to increase its military expenditures if our current budget goes through by 13%, meaning we'll have our military budget will be over $1 trillion in a time of peace. All other nations in the world, though, they're increasing their military budget. Obviously, Russia, because it's in a war with Ukraine. All of Europe, Israel, because it's at war with Gaza, and Germany, because the United States has told them you have to build up your militaries. And when countries build up their militaries, they use them. There is not precedence for building up militaries and then letting them sit there. There's a great quote by one of the founding fathers, Gouverneur Morris, I believe, at the Constitutional Convention. He said, large standing militaries are like large standing members, ensures domestic tranquility, but invites foreign affairs. Founding fathers were very afraid of big militaries because when they're big, they're used. That is one of the causes of World War I, is the industrialization of military equipment, which is why we're seeing more armed conflicts in the world now than we've seen in decades. And we're probably going to see a war with India and Pakistan, and China invade Thailand. There are a lot of people that think the United States can be protected because of the Atlantic and the Pacific. They were wrong in World War I, and they were wrong in World War II. The largest peace anti-war movement in U.S. history was called the America First Committee during World War II, and both times they proved to be wrong. They're even more wrong now because now we have the internet, and most of our wars are going to be fought online. It's going to be digital wars. So the idea that the United States can hide is not accurate. What we're experiencing right now is the collapse of the post-World War II order, in which the United States was the leader. And even including the wars that happened in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Korea, it was still the most peaceful period in human history, where major powers did not go to war with each other. That is breaking down. And it's because the United States is giving up its leadership role. We are going to see more global unrest and instability than we've seen since the 1930s, and it is going to affect all of us in ways that no one can predict. Likewise, there's also an environmental crisis happening, and I am not going to get into any discussion about global warming. I'm just going to get into the numbers. We are seeing increased amounts of $1 billion natural disasters happening. In 2024, it was about a $1 billion natural disaster every 13 days. There is no reason to think these are not going to keep happening and they're going to get worse. Well, what's happened so far in 2025, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which gathers the data and tracks the data for these natural disasters, it announced that it is no longer going to track the data. Why would it not track the data? Because if we saw the data, then we would come to the conclusion, oh, something's very wrong. You can't look at the data and not come to the conclusion that things are not going well. And we're going to be more and more at the mercy of the environment. So we're not going to be tracking that data anymore. The federal government is not. And that is a choice. Simultaneously, FEMA, that provides assistance, just announced they're going to slash their budget by $644 million. The acting FEMA director, his name is Cameron Hamilton, he publicly said this is a mistake. We're already short on funds and we cannot provide assistance to all the places that are being devastated by hurricanes. So he was fired. His replacement, the current head of the FEMA, his name is David Richardson. He pledged he was going to run over anyone that tries to resist increasing the spending. Well, it's already having effects in real time. And I believe it's Kentucky or Tennessee and the Carolinas, they're still devastated from a flood over a year ago, and they're not getting the assistance. So it's going to be less help. People are very quick to say we should cut back on FEMA until they need help. And then all of a sudden, it's different. This is not just administrative chaos or differences of opinion about federal fundings. This is a conscious dismantling of disaster relief and preparedness, and it is only going to have negative consequences. Coupled with that, we are also seeing our infrastructure deteriorate in real time. The United States currently ranks 13th globally in infrastructure quality, and that is amazing because it was just about 60 years ago, or it was at number one. 1 in 5 miles of roads are in poor condition. We have 45,000 bridges that are structurally deficient. And the Army Corps of Engineers did a review of all infrastructure in the United States. And overall, we are ranked a low C. This is very bad for all sorts of reasons. One of them is, for example, throughout the United States, every 2 minutes, one water main is breaking, spilling 6 billion gallons of fresh water per day. That is equivalent to 9,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water just being wasted because we haven't updated our infrastructure. This is really bad because of the current water crisis we're experiencing. 2/3 of the population live in water-stressed conditions. There have been several cases of day zero when cities are not producing enough water to supply the population. It's happened in Cape Town, Mexico City. It's going to happen in Jakarta. The ones that are coming up, London, Miami, Beijing, Istanbul. And in the United States, it's already having an effect in Las Vegas, it's New Orleans, parts of California, and in Texas. 2025, we began with the second lowest level aquifers in recorded history in Texas. The city of Conroe has had to halt all construction. City of Marlin has declared a disaster. So this is already affecting us. And I believe the May 14th and May 13th were the two hottest days, May 13th and 14th on record. We're already hitting 100-degree temperatures, and we're just mid-May. So this is going to continue to get worse and worse. There was a point in history when it would rain and people would have to stay home for 3 days, where they're at the mercy of the environment. And we are going back to that period because we're not dealing with the infrastructure and the water crisis, which is a crisis. This is on top of an economic crisis. Now, this lecture alone is so big, and also it's changing so fast that it's hard to pick which part to discuss. But in the short term, and I say short, I mean in the last couple of decades, we're experiencing 5 bubbles. Currently, we're experiencing a stock market bubble. Stock market is at record high, and it is going to correct. It is too overvalued. There is also a tech bubble within that. It is very few companies that where most of the investing is going into. And we have the biggest concentration of stocks, of money going into 10 stocks than we've ever had in the history of the stock market, which means within the stock market, which is a bubble, there's also a tech bubble. Those will have to correct themselves. There's also a crypto bubble, which is brand new. And yes, it is a bubble. There is nothing about crypto that says it is a stable currency long term. It's possible it could be, probably not. But it hasn't been around long enough for anyone to say with certainty that it is. So when anyone says with some sort of certainty, yes, it's going to be the currency of the future, they don't know what they're talking about because we don't have enough history behind it. But you don't see growth like this without it being a bubble. So yes, it is a bubble and it's going to pop at some point. There's also a housing bubble. Housing is, even though it has come down some, it is still at record highs. And there's also a commercial real estate bubble. Commercial real estate is incredibly high, and there's a lot of empty commercial space, especially in cities, that has not changed since COVID. This one may feel like it's not going to affect us, but it is attached to all the big banks in the country. And so when commercial real estate goes down, it'll take down the banking system. That'll take down the other ones. Any one of those 5 bubbles, if they collapse, they will bring down the other ones with them because they're all interconnected. However, it's possible that it's China that brings the rest of the world down because China is experiencing a bubble of its own. It is the real estate bubble. Part of China's miraculous growth is in real estate. Real estate in China is the single largest asset in the world. That means there is more money in Chinese real estate than there is in the US stock market, which is remarkable. To give you an idea of how big this is, China produces more cement than the rest of the world combined. And in just 3 years, from 2011 to 2013, China produced more cement than the United States did in 100 years from 1901 to 2000. The heyday of, or the American century, the United States did not produce as much cement as China did in just 3 years. So it is a bubble and it's going to pop. And for all the people that seem to think that good, screw China, they're our enemies, they are so intertwined with the US economy, one doesn't go up or down without the other one. If China's economy goes down, it will take the US economy down with it. They're so interconnected. That's why the tariffs that were put on it had to be pulled back because it's just too devastating of effect on the US economy. And I'm not defending China or China's practices. It's just a reality. The two nations have collectively control almost 50% of the global economy. And so those are the two economies that if one of them goes down, if any one of those bubbles I mentioned goes down, it will take the rest of the world with it. Now, this is going to happen because bubbles do pop. But in the long term, bigger problem that's affecting more and more people is what we're living through in terms of income inequality, the period called the Great Divergence. The vast majority of wealth for the last 50 years, 45 years since 1980 has been going to the very, very wealthy. Today, The top 1% of the United States controls about 32% of 31% of the world's of the US economy. And the bottom 50% controls about 2% of wealth. This is what an unhealthy economy looks like. If you'd like to know what a healthy economy looks like, see my lecture on the golden age of capitalism. We are now in what's called a winner-take-all economy, where a very small part of the population is doing really well, and the rest of the population, even in the middle class, is living paycheck to paycheck. And this is a very big problem because the majority of the US economy is consumer spending, 70% of it. That is how average Americans are spending. Well, if average Americans aren't spending, that means the system is going to break down. That is why income inequality was the same in the Great Depression as it was in 2007, and today it is higher than either of those periods. So this is dangerous for everyone. Credit card debt is rising, savings accounts are falling. The amount of people defaulting on their home loans, car loans, and credit card loans is increasing. And consumer pessimism is 60% last time I checked, which means it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. When people think the economy is not doing well, they're not going to spend, and then the economy will not do well. Well, what the hell happened? Why are so many people doing so poorly? It's because we stopped investing in Americans. Again, see the golden age of capitalism for what it looks like when the government invests in the US economy in a healthy way, and we have a very strong middle class. Since the 1960s and 70s, the vast majority of wealth in the United States is going to the very rich and also senior citizens. So that means the rest of the population is not going to be able to do well because that's where the wealth is going. And there is this attempt to try to cut back on government spending. And when the federal budget is not some magical thing that we don't know the numbers. We know the numbers. And the vast majority of federal spending goes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, other mandatory spending like paying veterans, and also defense spending and interest. The amount of the budget that we actually have any ability to make any changes on is absolutely negligible. And that is where we always focus the attention, cutting the programs that are going to help young people and poor people, making colleges more expensive, cutting stuff like SNAP, feeding kids in elementary school and middle school. That's where we're going to make the cuts, but we are not going to do the difficult things. Well, if the current budget goes through, we will cut Medicaid, which isn't as big as Medicare, because that is poor people, not seniors. We don't touch anything that's going to affect seniors, and which means the debt is only going to continue to rise. Now, most people, when they talk about the debt, they actually, throughout my lifetime, they have no idea what they're talking about because they are trying to save money by cutting bits and pieces here and there. It's called being penny rich, dollar foolish. Cutting $1 million to one research thing is not going to have any effect whatsoever. Cutting $1 billion, it's not going to have any effect on the national budget unless you deal with those other ones. And the debt is actually getting to be a very serious problem. It is a very serious problem. We have reached debt levels that are unhealthy, and it's going to keep getting worse because what is driving debt to get worse and worse is Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. In 2025, for the first time, interest payment on the debt alone is going to be more than the military budget. It's going to be more than $1 trillion just to pay interest on the loans. And there is not a serious attempt to try to fix this because you cannot fix it by cutting social programs. It has to be addressing healthcare, Social Security, and also raising taxes. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You cannot deal with the debt without raising taxes. There's a very good reason that every economist that looks into this matter comes to the same conclusion. Wow, the baby boomers have really done a number on the other generations. They got to go to college insanely cheap. Houses were affordable. Income inequality was the lowest it ever was. And now if you look at the federal budget, if you had no idea what country it was, the first thing you'd ask is, why does this country think senior citizens are more valuable than the rest of the population? Because that's what the budget says. That is not my interpretation. That is what the budget says. What this all boils down to is the United States, which was once one of the most fluid countries in the world in terms of social mobility. It's the only country that would allow someone like Alexander Hamilton to become Secretary of the Treasury, or Abraham Lincoln to go from a poor kid in a three-walled cabin to President of the United States, to now the number one thing that will determine whether someone will be wealthy or not is their parents. There are monarchies in the world that are more socially mobile than the United States. For the very first time in US history, people born in 1980 and later are going to be the very first generation that the majority of them are going to do worse than their parents. If you lived in the 1950s, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, most people, 92%, did better than their parents economically. Today, it's a coin toss. First time that's going to happen, which means it is not individual failures. Now, I'm not saying that individuals are absolved of all responsibility, but you don't get data this big, you don't get numbers this big without it being a systemic problem. And it is a systemic problem. And to say something very obvious that all of you know, we're also just not dealing with this stuff because we're experiencing a period of political polarization that we haven't seen since the 1850s. And very frequently, you will get older people that will say, well, when I was young, things were very politically divisive, not like they are today. I'm not saying that it wasn't bad in the past, but there are ways to measure this, and that's based on voting patterns in Congress and the ability to work across the aisle to get stuff done. We are going through one of the most politically polarizing periods in US history since the 1850s, right before the Civil War, because a majority of Americans say that the most dangerous thing in the country is other Americans. We are reverting to tribalism, which is what humans are naturally drawn to. Tribalism and identity politics. And you now can predict someone's voting pattern based on their demographics, not based on their policies. People care more about their in-group, who they see as like them, than they do as the country. They would rather put the other side down than do something that would benefit themselves even. Politics has become like our sports, basically. People pick a side. They only consume the media that supports them. It's like when you watch sports and someone yells at the ref every time the ref says anything against their team. Just unabashed partisanship without any attempt to try to act like it's not just partisanship, to defend their team over principles. And so what we are seeing is the deterioration of the founding principles of the United States. Representative democracy is in decline in the United States. And it's not because there is illegal and fraudulent voting. It's because we're destroying the voting institution. Capitalism is on the decline. And for all of capitalism's problems, it's still the best economic system the world's ever seen. It has its flaws, but it's on the decline. And also separation of church and states. Those are the three fundamentals of the United States. And separation of church and state, there's pushback on this right now. I will challenge anyone that can show me an example of a theocracy ruled by one religion in history or in the modern world that is a free and open society. They don't exist. There is no one religion, no one party, one ideology that is right all the time. So we are more divided than ever, so we're not dealing with these problems. And people wonder why there's a mental health crisis. There's all these theories. All of it comes back to, oh, it's the cell phones, people on their phones. Well, hell, it's all the other stuff too. I'm not saying phones don't have a part of it, they do, but that is to ignore a lot of the systemic problems that people understand. Even if they don't know the numbers, they understand things are bad. And they're so big that it's hard to not feel anything but anxious and depressed about it. Anxiety and depression, those are very sane responses to the insane conditions of the world right now. We are experiencing an increase in the deaths of despair. And also just this year, it has been announced that we will be cutting $1 billion in mental health funding from the Department of Education. So it's going to get worse. That is why there will be a crisis. And I have no idea what it's going to look like. No one does. Anyone that tells you they do, they're lying to themselves. It could be a major natural disaster that strikes the wrong area that leads to all sorts of other catastrophic failures. It can be a war. It can be a cyber attack. A very good book on this by a guy named Neil Howe. He wrote The Fourth Turning back in the 90s, and then he came out with The Fourth Turning here a couple of years ago. It's his victory lap. History goes in cycles. Every 80 to 100 years, there is a crisis. And first one was the American Revolution. Second one was Civil War. Third one was the Great Depression, World War II. And we are currently in the fourth turning. We're living through it right now. That is a meme that kind of demonstrates this. It's because when there's a crisis, the people that go through it, they build up the institutions. They make the institutions stronger. When I say institutions, that's when we created the US Constitution. Obviously, that's a strong institution. That's when after the Civil War, that's when the North was able to pass the policies that made it into the industrial superpower of the world. After the Great Depression, World War II, we created the most stable economic system the world has ever seen with the golden age of capitalism because of the New Deal and also the programs that were enacted because of World War II. We have destroyed those institutions. The periods before crisis always have some similar features. Hyper-partisanship, toxic individualism, tribalism. Something that goes along with this is there's always anti-immigrant sentiment. If you think anti-immigrant sentiment is bad now, go back to the 1850s, there was a whole party called the Know Nothing Party that was just about stopping immigrants because that's when it was Germans and Scottish because they were going to destroy America and America's culture. 1920s when we passed the most restrictive immigration policy, and today there's intense anti-immigrant sentiment. This is an endorsement of immigration. I'm just saying it is a feature of the period right before it. There's also a pervasive, because of toxic individualism, populism, anti-intellectualism, and anti-elitism, which means also conspiracy theories. That's why we are managing to bring back diseases that we had gotten rid of a long time ago because there are people that have Googled for a while and they are convinced that they know more than people that have been studying this stuff for their entire lives. This is what it looks like right before a collapse, right before a crisis. The word that you can think of that encompasses all of these things is instability. We're at the precipice. It's not going to take very much, just a little push. And the whole thing is going to fall. And there's going to be a crisis. Unless I'm wrong. unless everything I said is completely wrong. All the data, all the information is completely wrong, and we are living through a magic period where history has no value whatsoever. The past does not have any examples of the present because this time is different. This time we're living in such a special period that nothing can be compared to it. Bubbles do not pop. Nationalism doesn't lead to war, and trying to pull back from the world doesn't lead to instability. So what can we do about this? There is very little we can do as individuals. Every one of our problems are going to take collective action. And I don't mean collective action within the United States. I mean with other nations. We're talking about big, big problems. And I didn't even go into all of them. There are a lot more. Couple things that I can promise you will help. One, remember this word, chronocentrism. This is the belief that we are living in the height of human civilization and height of human understanding. Chronocentrism is the belief that we have the best understanding of the Constitution of the Bible, and that our wisdom, our knowledge is reached a pinnacle. Chronocentrism is what most people throughout most of human existence experience. And what we know is most of the time they're wrong. Chronocentrism is very good to remember because it's good to remember that there is no individual, no party, no political ideology, no religion, no tribe, and no generation that has a monopoly on all the answers. Most of the things that people are just absolutely certain they're going to care about, they're not going to care about. When someone loses access to fresh water, they're not going to care about someone's gender. When we have a war, when there's a tornado, all those other things are going to go away. When there's an economic collapse, people stop worrying about the bullshit because a lot of it is bullshit. And this is a great thing to remember because it means that we should be more humble and remember that some of the stuff we think we know it might not be right. There are 4 phrases of wisdom that if you can remember these, it will make your life so much easier. Those are, I was wrong, I need help, I'm sorry, and I don't know. If you can remember these 4 phrases, your life will be so much easier. I mean, just I don't know is such a useful phrase because if you can say that, it means you know what you don't know, but it also means you can be right 100% of the time as long as you remember to say that. What all these phrases do is show humility. I have a very hard time trusting anyone that's not able or not willing to admit when they're wrong and they don't know something, and to apologize when they are wrong. So chronocentrism, remember it, remember these phrases. They'll make your life easier. Compassion, and this is bear with me, I realize this sounds like a Hallmark idea, but compassion it's like a wonder drug. It's amazing how useful compassion is. Compassion, it's even more useful than empathy. Empathy is good. Going to say something controversial, but Elon Musk is wrong when he says empathy is a problem. Empathy is good. The problem with it, though, is that it's finite. You can't have empathy for everyone because it will drain your energy. Compassion, in contrast, you can have for everyone because it just means you don't want to see other people suffering. Jesus had compassion. Mother Teresa had compassion. That's why they were able to show so much love to so many people because they just don't want them to suffer. And what's great about compassion is it inherently means you're going to show it to other people, but you also show it to yourself. Dalai Lama has another quote. If you want to make others happy, show compassion. If you want to make yourself happy, show compassion. It's actually the same muscle. It's the amygdala. There's a researcher named Abigail Marsh at Georgetown University that studies this. And when you show more compassion to other people, you will show it more to yourself. So if you have that negative voice in your head, like a lot of us do, if you want to make that go away, show compassion to other people. Just wish everyone the best and don't make their life more difficult. Do it for a totally selfish reason. It will make you a happier person. What we can do as individuals, show compassion to other, it means have connection. The biggest longitudinal study ever done of happiness, conducted by Harvard, shows that strong impersonal relationships are the key to happiness. So if you want your life to be better, it's through connection. And our future depends on having those connections with other people. That is actually a big reason why I do the oral history assignment. You have to sit down with someone and you have to listen to them tell their story. You have to connect with them by listening to them tell you about themselves. And I guarantee you, for a lot of people, you made that person's day, you made their week, you made their month. For some people, you will have made their year just by listening to them. That's how you connect, is you just listen to them tell about themselves. Connection is guaranteed. That is the most important thing any one of us can do to feel less anxiety and less depression, is have strong in-person relationships. Our brain does not recognize digital relationships as being fulfilling. They are fulfilling in the moment, like drinking alcohol, but they do not lead to long-term sense of stability. Our brains just were not wired like that. So create connections. What you can do for yourself to increase your baseline level of happiness, and this is something that is very tangible and very practical. It's called J-Game: journaling, gratitude, acts of kindness, meditation, and exercise. These 5 things are some of the most heavily studied and researched things in psychology that every one of us can do to increase our baseline level of happiness. We all have a general baseline level of happiness. If you win the lottery, it'll spike. If you have a catastrophic loss, it'll dip. But then we go back to it. That is our norm. These 5 things will increase your baseline level of happiness. So if depression is your norm, then it will increase. It will make that a little bit less. And the most important thing about all these, though, is consistency. If you don't get anything done in a day, just get these things done. Journaling, just write down 10 minutes. Just put on a timer, 10 minutes, put your phone away, don't use your phone. Do it by hand. That's been proven. If you write by hand, it will actually change the structure of your brain more than if you do it on your phone. There's too many distractions and you don't think as deeply. So journal by hand for 10 minutes. Gratitude, just write 3 things you're grateful for. And it sounds like bullshit. I thought it was. I did it because I knew the science, and the science was very clear about it. I just wrote 3 things. For the first month I did it, I think one of my things I was grateful for was, I'm glad I'm not such an effing idiot that I believe this will work. What you're actually doing is there's a part of your brain that will feel gratitude. And when you're very depressed, that is basically atrophied. That muscle hasn't been used. You're taking a muscle that hasn't been used and you're doing small reps. You're doing 2-pound reps, 1-pound reps, starting off. The more you do it, the more you will start feeling gratitude. So just doing it, you're not going to feel anything immediately, but over time, you will start feeling gratitude. And it'll happen in very subtle ways. You'll be standing outside on a hot day and you'll get a nice breeze and you'll be grateful for that breeze coming through. Acts of kindness, just do something nice for someone else. If you're not wanting to be around other people, which is very understandable, what I did when I was going through my lowest period is I just got a grocery bag. I went for a walk because being outside is also proven to decrease depression, and so is exercise. And I picked up 5 pieces of trash. That's it. It makes you feel better. Look for ways you can do kind things. And this is kindness to strangers, kindness to the world, kindness where you are not going to be getting something back from it. The Buddha is saying, plant a tree under whose shade you will never experience. You are doing something good for the world. Meditation, this can mean a lot of things. It doesn't just mean sitting down and focusing on your breath. Meditation, it can also be praying. That is, praying and meditation have a lot of similarities. Meditation doesn't mean you clear your mind. It means you're focusing on your breathing. Gardening can be meditation. Art can be a form of meditation. And exercise, movement. This is the single thing that will help with depression and anxiety is exercise. If you are depressed, exercise, especially cardio. If you do cardio to the point of sweating, then you can run to the point of not being depressed anymore for a little while. And also, but it keeps depression away. It is one of the best things you can do. For anxiety, weights is very useful. But if you do those 5 things, it'll make you a happier person. And the research is overwhelming on it. I did not want to believe it worked, but it does. And the research is very clear about that. And cooperation. There are 340 million people in this country. It is absolutely insane that anyone or any one group, whether it's a religious group, a political party, whatever the tribe is, thinks that they have a monopoly on what is right for everyone else, and that their view of the world is going to apply to everyone else. The United States, the most amazing thing about it is it's survived this long. It is such a big country. And if you think of how diverse it is, 340 million people, no one person's life or one group is going to represent even a fraction of the minority. It's just too big. The fact that Maine and Florida and Hawaii and Alaska and Texas can all be in the same nation, that is what's truly amazing. That's what's remarkable. That's why we've had great leaders that came at the right moment to unite the majority of Americans. We'll never be fully united, ever. Hell, Abraham Lincoln, in the middle of the Civil War in 1864, he only got 55% of the vote. 45% of people thought he was doing a terrible job. So we'll never be united, but we should try to unite ourselves based on some basic principles, basic beliefs that are fundamental to the United States: representative democracy, capitalism, and religious freedom. Those are the 3 fundamentals, but we have to work together to do it. Cooperation means we'll work together and we'll lift ourselves up together. Compromise is, you know what they say about a good compromise is when everyone feels like they've been screwed. But compromise is better than what we have now. And that's just not getting anything done. We have too many problems and they're too big for any one person or one group. It has to be a collective action and we have to do it together. This is what gives me hope. This is why I actually believe the future is going to be better. And no one has ever accused me of toxic positivity. But I mean it to my core when I say, I have hope because of you. Younger generations, understand one fundamental truth, that we are all in this together. They're sometimes called the Mosaic generation because mosaics are stained glass, like a puzzle. It only works if all the pieces are there together. That's what the United States is. It's never been a melting pot. It's always been a mosaic, but it only works because it's a mosaic. It only works when it works together. I have trust in your generation because the numbers show that younger generations understand this intuitively. And there's a book on this, The Next America. It's the Pew Research Center. Younger generations overwhelmingly support policies that are going to benefit old people as well as benefit young people. By the numbers, it doesn't go the same, or it doesn't go the other way around. The majority of seniors do not support economic policies that will benefit younger people, just ones that will support them. Do not become dispirited and don't become pessimistic because of it. If we become pessimistic, then we are going to lose this fight. And there is going to be chaos and there's going to be crisis. There's going to be instability, but the reason I keep doing what I do and the reason I keep teaching history is because you guys, you all have led me to believe that I should have faith in the future. And I do have hope that through effort, through showing compassion to each other, things are going to get better. We're living through one of the most difficult periods in history. If you remember nothing else from this class, remember this one thing. If you can make someone's life better, do that. If you can't, don't make it worse. No one needs that. It's been wonderful working with everyone this semester.